They believed a mirror could only reflect. Admiral Eva Rostova stood on the command deck of the human fleet carrier Tallyman, her form a still point in a storm of quiet, urgent activity. Her ship was a testament to humanity's stark philosophy: everything was counted, everything was balanced, and every action had a price. The polished deck plates beneath her boots vibrated with the silent thrum of the Singularity Core, a constant sensory reminder of the power she held in check. Before her, the main hololith displayed the Viridian system, a jewel of green and blue gas giants, set against the black velvet of space now marred by a network of angry red icons that represented the hegemony of Vantis. Their blockade was a fist clenched around the system's primary world. The voice of Proctor Marshal Kalin, filtered through a tight beam transmission, was a ruinous rasp of manufactured authority, devoid of warmth or reason. Your compliance is not a request. It is a condition of your continued existence. Cede control of the Viridian isotope refineries and swear fealty to the hegemony. The message concluded with its terrible, simple punctuation. A countdown timer appeared in the corner of the hololith's stark white numerals against a crimson field: 71 hours, 58 minutes, and 12 seconds. It was a clock counting down to subjugation or annihilation. Fleet Mind Solon confirmed their disposition. Rostova said, her voice calm and level, cutting through the bridge's low hum. Confirmed, Admiral, the AI's synthesized voice replied, smooth as cooled glass. 37 hegemony capital ships supported by 112 escort-class frigates and destroyers. They maintain a layered orbital denial pattern. Our 11th Expeditionary Fleet is outnumbered 3-1. The tactical display shimmered, resolving the enemy formation into a precise, menacing geometry. Commander Jian Li, her tactical officer, stepped forward, his jaw tight. They are arrogant, Admiral. They sit in high orbit as if they've already won. We are not here to win a war. We are here to teach a lesson. Rostova's eyes remained fixed on the timer. The hegemony's ultimatum doctrine was a known poison in the galactic community, a predator's strategy that targeted those who couldn't fight back. They presented their demands as an equation of logic, where surrender was the only variable that resulted in survival. Humanity, however, had always been poor at accepting such rigid math. They preferred calculus, the mathematics of change and consequence. A faint scent of ozone from a nearby console sharpened the air. They have trapped the last civilian convoy, said Sub-Commander Anya Sharma from her sensor station, her fingers dancing across a light inlaid console. 16 transports, 80,000 souls holding at the system's edge. The hegemony is using them as leverage, a demonstration of their control. Their doctrine demands an audience to witness their power. Rostova mused, her gaze unfocusing for a moment. They believe fear is a resource to be harvested. She turned to her team, the faint glare from the hololith casting long shadows across the command deck. They have presented us with an ultimatum. We will present them with a balance sheet. Their threat is a number. Our response will be an equation. In the sterile, echoing halls of the orbital transfer station above Viridia Prime, a young girl named Alara clutched her father's hand. The air tasted of recycled oxygen and anxiety. All around them, families huddled together, their belongings crammed into worn travel cases. They were the last of the evacuees, the ones who had waited too long, hoping for a diplomatic miracle that never came. The station's grand viewport, once a source of wonder, now framed the terrifying sight of a hegemony battlecruiser, a jagged silhouette eclipsing the distant stars. Her father pointed a shaky finger toward a different set of lights, tiny and silver against the black. See there? That's the human fleet, he whispered, his voice tight, with a desperate hope. They don't run. Rostova watched the tactical plot, her mind a quiet space of calculation and foresight. The convoy was the first problem to be solved, the first line item on a ledger that was rapidly filling with red ink. Solon projected the failure rate of a direct kinetic breach of the blockade line. 97.4% catastrophic failure for the convoy. Admiral, the AI responded instantly. 78% unacceptable losses for our own fleet. The hegemony line is anchored by their heaviest cruisers. We cannot punch through it. Then we won't. Rostova said simply, Commander Sharma, I want the mirror lattice deployed. Full Ghost Fleet projection. Let's give them something else to look at. They expect a hammer. We will be the light that bends around it. Sharma's expression sharpened with focus. Aye, Admiral. We'll generate a ghost fleet twice our size vectoring in from Viridia's solar opposite point. It will look like a flanking reinforcement. They will expect a trick Jian Li countered stepping closer to the hololith. Kalen isn't a fool. His skirmishers will probe the signals, find them empty, and his main line will hold. The console beside him hissed as a coolant line purged a brief sharp sound in the focused silence. That's the point, Commander Rostova replied, a faint, almost imperceptible smile touching her lips. We don't need them to believe the ghosts are real for very long. We just need them to divide their attention. We need them to look left so we can slip out to the right. Her plan was not about overwhelming force, but about misdirection. It was a strategy of light and shadow, not of steel and fire. They cannot hold a line against a foe that is everywhere and nowhere. The order was given. From the cavernous launch bays of the Taliman and its escort carriers, swarms of small silver drones were released into the void. They were simple things, little more than a drive, a power source, and a sophisticated emitter array. Alone, they were insignificant. Together, they could weave a tapestry of lies so convincing it could fool an entire fleet. They fanned out, accelerating toward the far side of the system, preparing to become an army of phantoms. Sharma's station became a nexus of energy patterns and signal projections. Mirror lattice is active. We are painting a ghost fleet admiral. 20 capital-class signatures, 60 escorts. Their heat and energy profiles are matched to our own. On the main display, a new set of blue icons bloomed, a formidable fleet appearing out of nowhere. Proctor Marshal Kalen is reacting. Solon reported, his tone analytical. He is dispatching a wing of destroyers to intercept the ghost signatures. As predicted, his main battle line remains unbroken. Their discipline will become their prison. Just as Jian Li had foreseen, the hegemony was cautious. They treated the ghost fleet as a credible threat, but refused to compromise the integrity of their blockade. The red icons of their fleet held their formation with rigid discipline, a solid wall of overlapping weapon and sensor fields. The civilian convoy remained pinned. The vibration in the deck plates seemed to deepen a low thrum of anticipation. The feint isn't enough. Li stated, his frustration evident. They won't open a gap for us. They will, Rostova said, her gaze fixed on a small flickering anomaly Sharma had isolated on her sensor screen deep within the enemy formation. It was a faint energy signature almost lost in the noise of the 37th capital ships. Sub-Commander. That signal you flagged earlier. It's still there, isn't it? Pulsing in a regular sequence. Yes. Admiral Sharma confirmed, zooming in. It doesn't match any known hegemony ship class. It's layered, heavily shielded, and it seems to be coordinating their sensor data. It's like a massive centralized command node. This is the reveal. The mystery of the hegemony's perfect coordination wasn't just discipline. It was technology, a hidden asset. Rostova's strategy snapped into a new, sharper focus. That's our target. They aren't just a fleet. They're a network, and that node is its brain. We weren't meant to see it. She turned to Sharma. Can you blind it? Blind it? Sharma's eyes widened slightly. Admiral A focused electronic warfare burst of that magnitude would be like firing a signal flare in the dark. They'd know we see them. They'd know we'd cracked their network topology. Precisely, Rostova said. They believe their network is their greatest strength. We will make it their greatest vulnerability. It is time to close their eyes. Jian, I want the frigate Steadfast to prepare a single kinetic dart. Target the lead hegemony destroyer on the convoy's perimeter. Do not fire. Wait for my command. She looked back at Sharma. On my mark, you will hit that central node with a single overwhelming burst of coherent electromagnetic noise. For 60 seconds they will be deaf and blind. The commands rippled through the fleet. On the bridge of the Steadfast, its captain confirmed the targeting solution. Within Sharma's station, energy capacitors whined as they charged for the EW assault. The civilian convoy, waiting in agonizing silence, received a simple coded message. Prepare for burn on command. The countdown timer on the main screen read 68 hours, 14 minutes, and 31 seconds. All assets are in position, Admiral Solon stated. Rostova took a breath, the recycled air feeling cool in her lungs. She watched the unblinking red icons of the hegemony fleet. They were a wall of certainty, of doctrine, of unwavering belief in their own power. Mark, she said, their perfect system is about to experience its first error. A silent lance of pure data screamed across the void, aimed not at a hull, but at a network. On the hegemony tactical display, the perfectly coordinated icons flickered. For a moment, they devolved from a coherent formation into a disorganized cluster of individual ships. Kalen's central command node, the hidden key to his control, was drowning in static. At the same instant, the 16 civilian transports ignited their engines, accelerating into the narrow, temporary corridor that had just been opened in the enemy's sensor coverage. The corridor is open, convoy is away, Sharma called out, her voice tight with tension. But the hegemony's reaction was fast. Even blinded, their local ship commanders followed doctrine. The nearest destroyer, acting on its last known orders, began to pivot its weapon ports, sliding open. It was turning to intercept the fleeing transports. Jian now, Rostova commanded. Disable it. From the Steadfast, a tiny sliver of metal no larger than a human arm was launched at a significant fraction of the speed of light. It carried no warhead, only immense kinetic energy. It struck the hegemony destroyer not on its armored hull, but at the precise junction of its main engine block. The impact was surgical. The ship didn't explode. It simply died. Its lights flickered out. Its engines went cold. And it began a slow, helpless drift. A single broken link can unravel the entire chain. The convoy slipped past the disabled ship and into the safety of open space. The 60-second window of blindness elapsed, and the hegemony network reasserted itself. But it was too late. Their leverage was gone. On the main hololith, Proctor Marshal Kalen's face appeared, his features contorted in a mask of cold fury. He did not speak. He simply pointed a finger at the ultimatum clock. The numbers blurred and then resolved into a new, terrifyingly short deadline, 29 hours, 45 minutes, and 10 seconds. He had cut the remaining time in half. He's escalating, Lee said, stating the obvious. The bridge was silent for a moment, the low hum of the ship the only sound. Then a report came in from the Steadfast. Admiral, we took a glancing hit from the disabled ship's automated point defense system before its power failed. Shield integrity at 90%. minor plasma scoring along the dorsal hull. 3 crew members in sickbay with minor burns from a ruptured conduit. Rostova nodded, her expression unreadable. Acknowledge the report. See to the wounded. She looked at the hololith at the face of her enemy. The first transaction was complete. The convoy was safe at the cost of minor damage and a much shorter fuse. This was the ledger she kept. A tally of costs and consequences. Solon's voice cut through the quiet. Admiral analysis of the hegemony's network during the EW burst has revealed a significant vulnerability. Their doctrine of public ultimatum is hard-coded into their battle network. They broadcast everything not just for propaganda, but for their own internal record-keeping. This fleet teaches by numbers and remembers by ledgers, never by collars. Rostova's gaze sharpened. An internal record, explain. Their system maintains a constant real-time audit of strategic effectiveness, Solon elaborated. Every ultimatum issued is logged. The cost of enforcement fuel, expended munitions, used ships damaged or lost is tallied against the Proctor Marshal's public record. His position, his very authority, appears to be contingent on a doctrine of low-cost, high-yield subjugation. A new path forward began to form in Rostova's mind, a strategy far more ambitious than simply breaking a blockade. It was a way to break the doctrine itself, to turn their own weapon, their own system of accounting against them. Their greatest strength is the key to their undoing. Aboard one of the freed transports, the girl Alara was pressed against the viewport again. The disabled hegemony destroyer was a dark, silent shape tumbling slowly through space. Further away, the human fleet was regrouping their silver hulls, catching the light of the distant sun. They looked like protectors, like promises kept. She saw the flash of welding torches on the hull of one of the ships, a tiny spark of repair in the vast darkness. They had paid a price for her freedom, and the thought filled her with a profound, quiet awe. They're angry now, Jian Li said, watching the hegemony fleet redeploy into an even tighter, more aggressive posture. They feel they've been made to look weak. Kalin will be looking to make an example of us. Let him, Rostova said. Her voice was imbued with a new, harder certainty. The time for restraint and deflection was passing. The time for a final, decisive lesson was approaching. We've shown them we can bend light. Now we will show them what a mirror can truly do. They want a battle. We will give them a reckoning. The new plan was audacious, bordering on insane. It was not about a direct assault, but about a public dismantling of an ideology. We are going to give them exactly what they want. Rostova explained to her command team, the hololith now showing a complex series of overlapping energy fields and tactical vectors. A final, decisive engagement. We will appear to create a weakness in our own formation, an open corridor inviting a charge. A kill box. Li breathed, his eyes wide. He'll fall on it with everything he has. Yes, Rostova confirmed. He will see it as the perfect opportunity to enforce his ultimatum and broadcast our destruction as his ultimate triumph. He will move his heaviest ships into the corridor to ensure the outcome. We can't survive a direct confrontation with their primary battlecruisers. Sharma warned, her brow furrowed in concern. The scent of hot metal from her overworked console was a constant reminder of the energies she commanded. We won't be there, Rostova stated. The ships entering that corridor will be the most advanced decoys we have, projecting every signature of our fleet at full combat power. The real 11th Fleet will be somewhere else entirely. A mirror can show you the enemy you expect to see. Solon's synthesized voice added the final piece of the puzzle. While Proctor Marshal Kalin is focused on destroying our ghosts, Sub-Commander Sharma will breach the encryption on his public broadcast channel. We have learned it is not merely a broadcast channel, but a two-way data link to the hegemony's central records. Rostova looked at each of her officers in turn. Kalin wants to broadcast a victory to legitimize his doctrine. We will give him a broadcast, but it will not be the one he expects. Instead of our destruction, the galaxy will see a live feed of his own ledger. They will watch as the cost of his victory skyrockets in real time. We'll be turning his own accounting system into a weapon against him. Lee said, a slow smile spreading across his face. He'll be executing his own career in front of a live audience. The hegemony's power is built on the perception of efficient, effortless dominance, Rostova concluded. We will show them and the galaxy the true price of their ultimatums. We will show them the cost of trying to put a collar on the human spirit. Their ledger is written in ink. Ours is written in fire and consequence. The pieces began to move. The advanced decoys, indistinguishable from the real ships of the 11th Fleet, maneuvered into a defensive posture, deliberately leaving a tantalizingly open path toward the Tallyman. The rest of the human fleet, under the cover of a newly developed stealth field that warped sensor returns around their hulls, slipped into the dark, taking up positions on the flanks of the unsuspecting hegemony armada. Every console on the bridge glowed with readiness, the air thick with unspoken tension. Proctor Marshal Kalin is taking the bait. Sharma reported, her voice low and steady. His primary assault group is changing vector. They are aligning with the corridor. He is broadcasting system-wide, Solon added. He is announcing the final punishment for our defiance. He is inviting the galaxy to watch us burn. On the main screen, the hegemony fleet began its majestic, terrible advance. They were a wave of iron and fire, confident in their power, certain of their victory. They were moving into a trap of their own, making a kill box designed to slaughter an enemy that wasn't there. The ultimatum timer ticked below 3 hours. The hum of the Singularity Core seemed to resonate in Rostova's bones. This was the moment of truth, the point where the equation would be solved. Her final order was not a command to fire weapons, but to wield truth as one. Solon, she said, her voice ringing with cold, clear authority, open their books. It's time for a public accounting. Brace for the reckoning. The broadcast feed flickered not to black, but to a stark, sterile interface of columns and scrolling numbers. Across the Viridian system, and on countless screens in listening posts across the sector, the expected spectacle of human destruction was replaced by an accountant's nightmare. It was Kalin's own internal strategic ledger laid bare for all to see. At the top, in bold hegemony script, were the words, Ultimatum Doctrine Efficacy Report. Proctor Marshal Kalin Viridian System. Below it, line items began to populate in real time. Munitions expenditure, Class 5 plasma torpedoes, quantity 128, strategic value nominal. The console next to Rostova hissed softly, its internal temperature rising with the strain of the data intrusion. Kalin's voice, which had been booming with pronouncements of righteous fury, was replaced by the cold, emotionless tone of his own network's accounting system. Fuel consumption, combat maneuvers, Assault Group Alpha, debit 14.7% of operational reserves. The hegemony battlecruisers, magnificent engines of war, unleashed a storm of plasma and kinetic energy into the corridor, their turrets tracing lines of incandescent rage. The ghost ships, the advanced decoys, flickered and died under the onslaught, their demise perfectly mimicking the catastrophic explosions of real capital ships. Their projected energy signatures vanished from the tactical plot, each one a testament to the hegemony's overwhelming firepower. They were winning a war against shadows. On the bridge of the hegemony flagship, the unassailable edict Proctor Marshal Kalin watched his tactical display with grim satisfaction as the human icons vanished one by one. "Report," he barked, a triumphant snarl in his voice. "Confirm their fleet is breaking." But his communications officer stared at his console, his face pale. "Sir, the public channel. It's not our feed." Before Kalen could process the words, a new line item appeared on the broadcasted ledger, a dreadful crimson entry that pulsed with significance. Asset loss projection, human fleet carrier. Tallyman. Status unverified. Cost analysis pending. "What is this?" Kalen's voice dropped to a dangerous whisper. He was watching his own system question his victory before it had even been won. Rostova watched the hegemony's primary assault group commit deeper into the trap, their engines burning hot and bright. They were now fully extended, their flanks and rear exposed. The air on the Tallyman's bridge was electric, every crew member poised, their breath held, in a collective moment of anticipation. The low thrum of the ship's core was a steady, reassuring heartbeat. "They've paid the entry fee," Rostova said, her voice cutting through the silence. "Time to present the full bill." She turned to Jian Li, her eyes like chips of ice. "Commander, unveil the mirrors. It is time to show them their true reflection." With a single command, the stealth fields shrouding the 11th Expeditionary Fleet collapsed. In the blackness on either side of the hegemony charge, an entire fleet winked into existence. But they did not open fire immediately. Instead, the swarms of mirror lattice drones, their decoy duties complete, repositioned themselves in a complex, shimmering web between the human fleet and the hegemony's exposed ships. They were no longer projecting ghosts. They were now a weapon system of unparalleled precision. "Kalen is aware of our presence," Sharma reported, her voice calm, despite the immense pressure. "He's trying to revector his ships. He's caught." The hegemony commanders' paragons of rigid discipline were thrown into chaos. Their doctrine had no protocol for an enemy that was supposed to be in front of them, suddenly appearing on both sides. Their heavy ships, designed for frontal assaults, were slow to turn their main guns facing the empty corridor where their victory was supposed to have been. A single moment of confusion is a lifetime in battle. Li Rostova ordered, "Begin the accounting. Target their engines and their primary weapon arrays. Disable, do not destroy. Solon, update the ledger with every successful strike." The first volley from the human fleet was not a barrage, but a series of precise surgical lances of coherent energy. The beams struck the repositioned mirror lattice, and for a breathtaking instant, the space between the fleets became a prism. Each beam was split, refracted, and redirected from a dozen different angles, simultaneously converging on single vulnerable points of the hegemony ships. A destroyer's primary plasma cannon was sliced clean from its mounting. A cruiser's engine block was slagged into incandescent ruin, its powerful forward momentum turning it into a helpless, drifting hulk. Point defense systems designed to track a handful of incoming threats were overwhelmed by the multi-vector assault. They fired wildly, trying to intercept attacks that seemed to come from every direction at once. On the public broadcast, the ledger began to scroll faster, the entries turning from tactical debits to catastrophic losses. Hegemony destroyer, implacable will, main cannon, inoperable, status combat ineffective. Another line appeared a second later. Hegemony cruiser, certain retribution propulsion system, critical failure, status adrift. Their certainty was the first casualty. On Viridia Prime, in a public square crowded around a massive public view screen, a collective gasp went through the crowd. The initial terror of the hegemony's broadcast had given way to stunned silence, and now to a rising, incredulous cheer. They were not watching their saviors die. They were watching a predator being systematically and bloodlessly dismantled, its teeth and claws clipped one by one, its own accounting system, narrating its humiliation for the entire galaxy to witness. An old man who had seen 2 hegemony occupations in his lifetime wept openly, not from fear, but from a hope he thought long dead. Proctor Marshal Kalen stared at the unfolding disaster, his mind refusing to accept the reality of the tactical plot. His finest ships were being rendered inert, without a single catastrophic explosion. He was being beaten not by a superior weapon, but by a superior idea. His fists clenched, the knuckles white. Fire at will, he roared to his fleet. All ships fire at will, break their formation, erase them. But his fleet was a coiled spring that had already sprung. The ships in the kill corridor were too deep to offer support, while the ships on the flanks were now the targets. A few managed to return fire, their shots wild and uncoordinated. On the Tallyman's bridge, a proximity alert blared. A debt is always paid in full. Incoming plasma volley starboard side. Jian Li called out. It's from one of their flanking battlecruisers. Brace for impact. Rostova commanded, her hands gripping the command podium to steady herself. The ship shuddered as the shields absorbed the blow, the lights flickering for a half-second. The air filled with the scent of superheated metal and ozone. Shields holding at 82%, Solon reported calmly. Minor buckling on Deck 7. Medical teams dispatched to a ruptured power conduit. 4 crew with flash burns. All are conscious. The cost of this lesson was beginning to be tallied on her own side of the ledger, a price she accepted with grim resolve. The hegemony battlecruiser that had fired the volley was immediately targeted. A coordinated lance of energy reflected through a dozen mirror drones converged on its massive sensor mast. The intricate array, the ship's eyes and ears, vaporized in a silent flash of light. The behemoth was blinded, its torrent of fire ceasing as its targeting locks failed. They cannot fight what they cannot see. The battle, if it could be called that, continued for another 30 minutes. It was a methodical, relentless process. The human fleet moved with the cold precision of a surgeon, the mirror lattice, their scalpel. They cut away the hegemony fleet's ability to fight, to move, to even see, leaving a debris field of silent, powerless, but largely intact warships. The Ledger broadcast told the story with brutal, objective clarity. Hegemony Fleet, 17th Armada, combat effectiveness, 12%. Projected cost of repairs exceeds total asset set value. Ultimatum. Status failed. The final red entry was a death sentence for a career and an ideology. Kalen's flagship, the unassailable Edict, was now alone, surrounded by the ghosts of its own disabled fleet. It had not yet been fired upon. Rostova was saving the final line item for the Proctor Marshal himself. Solon, open a channel to the Edict. Audio and visual. Put it on the main screen. Kalen's face appeared on the hololith. The mask of fury had crumbled, replaced by a gray, hollowed-out shock. He looked not at Rostova, but at the scrolling ledger that was still being broadcast on a secondary screen behind her, a constant damning testament to his failure. Proctor Marshal Kalen Rostova began, her voice even and devoid of triumph. You came here to enforce an ultimatum. You believed your power gave you the right to present a choice between subjugation and destruction. You were mistaken. Power does not grant rights. It incurs responsibilities. The first of which is to understand the true cost of your actions. She gestured toward the hololith showing his crippled fleet. Your doctrine is built on a lie. The lie is that fear is cheap, that intimidation is efficient. Today we have audited that lie and we have found it to be insolvent. Your fleet is disabled. Your ultimatum is broken. And your authority, which is tied to this public ledger, is gone. They built a throne of numbers. It has now collapsed. Kalen finally looked at her, his eyes burning with a hateful, impotent rage. You have made an enemy of the hegemony, Admiral. You will be hunted. You will be destroyed. No, Rostova corrected him gently. We have taught the hegemony a lesson. We have demonstrated that your doctrine is a strategic vulnerability. The next Proctor Marshal to rise will do so by studying your failure. This is how learning happens. You have two options. Power down your weapons and signal your surrender, and your crew will receive aid. Or you can be the final entry on this ledger. The choice is yours. We will not offer you an ultimatum. We are offering you an accounting. For a long moment, Kalen was silent. The only sound on the tallyman's bridge was the quiet hum of the life support systems. The glare from a nearby console cast a stark light on Rostova's unwavering expression. Around them, the disabled hegemony ships drifted like tombstones. Kalen looked at his officers on his own bridge, seeing the same despair and shock in their eyes. He had led them to this. His doctrine, his arrogance, his unshakable belief in the simple math of power had led them to ruin. With a gesture that seemed to cost him the last of his strength, he nodded to his communications officer. A moment later, a new status appeared on the public ledger. Hegemony flagship, unassailable edict. Status, standing down. Surrender declared. A new precedent must be written. Solon's voice filled the quiet of the bridge. Admiral, as per Protocol 7 Delta, I am entering a formal note into the Galactic public record. On the main broadcast feed below the final ruinous tally of Kalen's failure, new text appeared written in the clear, unambiguous script of interstellar law. Hegemony Ultimatum Doctrine, Article 7. Having been demonstrated as strategically and economically insolvent in a Class 1 engagement, is hereby declared a failed protocol. All associated diplomatic and military privileges are rescinded pending review by the Galactic Conquered. The message was a final institutional nail in the coffin of Kalen's way of war. Rostova watched the surrender confirmation, then turned to her crew. A quiet, tired cheer went up. Jian Li was grinning, shaking his head in disbelief. Anya Sharma leaned back in her chair, closing her eyes for a moment, the tension finally leaving her. Rostova allowed herself a small, brief smile. The cost had been minimal, a handful of wounded, some repairable hull damage, and a significant expenditure of energy for the stealth fields and mirror lattice. A fair price for the lesson that had been taught here today. The lights of the hegemony blockade, the angry red warnings that had defined the system's sky, began to dim. One by one, the warships powered down their external systems, their threat postures dissolving into a cold, silent neutrality. The public tally on the broadcast froze the final numbers, glowing a deep, ruinous red for the permanent record of Proctor Marshal Kalen. High above the thousands of drones of the mirror lattice, their duty done, vented their excess heat, their incandescent silver surfaces cooling to the dull, unassuming pewter of inactive metal. Rostova walked to the main viewport, looking out at the now peaceful system. Her reflection stared back at her from the armored glass, a tired but resolute figure, against a backdrop of stars and silent, defeated ships. This was the true purpose of the 11th Expeditionary Fleet. Not to conquer, but to balance. To present a bill to those who believed they could act without consequence. They did not seek to rule, only to teach that the universe always eventually keeps a perfect ledger. And on that ledger, the value of a single free soul was an integer too large to be written. Their math had no room for the human spirit.